Hello, everyone. Welcome to AXSChat. Today you have Antonio and I, and it was Neil's wedding anniversary. So his wife said he was not going to work today. As Mark said, happy wife, happy life. Right, Mark? So, Mark, welcome to AXSChat. We're really excited about talking to you about what you're doing in Germany and how you're collaborating with others, and also how you're working with parts of the German government. So it's very exciting. Do you mind telling the audience a little bit, Mark, about your work? I know you were a digital accessibility consultant. You're very engaged with really making sure things are accessible for everybody. But tell us more about who you are, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you for the nice welcome. I'm an accessibility consultant. I'm helping companies to get more accessible. Now we have the European Accessibility Act, and there are really some concerns about how to comply. And so, I'm getting the questions and I'm answering them. And a lot is about testing and finding problems, and I had to fix them. As being a developer myself earlier, for nearly 20 years, I was making accessible web pages, websites, and I think I can give some good advice to them.
Yes,
I think that's a good pointer that you mentioned, the European Accessibility Act. And considering that you are working as a freelance and you are also doing some work supporting government initiatives, how do you see the private organizations and sometimes people who work in the government sector looking at the European Accessibility Act? You mentioned that there are questions. How do you? What is your view about how these two entities see the act?
This is a wide spectrum. Can I say this in English? Yeah, because it's from complete ignorance, I don't care, until the fear of lawsuits and that people are concerned and they want to comply. And also, of course, it's raising awareness, and some people are really interested in making some impact. They were not thinking about accessibility until now, and they now want to do the right thing. This is also there now. So the European Accessibility Act has an impact, and a good one, and I think it's good that we have it.
I think so too. I think it's really a blessing that the EU did that, because if the EU had not done that right now with what we're doing in the States with DEI and woke and things like that, it just I think would have been so much harder for the world. So I'm really, really, really thankful that the EU is standing up and saying humans matter, human inclusion matters. So, but Mark, you also have worked with the German government, and could you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there and how that really plays into you being a accessibility consultant too? Because before we went on air, you were telling Antonio and I some really interesting stuff about using words like metrics and scoring and points. And so I really liked hearing those words that you were using, because that sounded to me like that's when we actually make things accessible to humans. But do you mind just telling us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. The government is in a quite good position. It's hard to sue the government, and there are some steps you have to achieve before you can do anything. So I think this is a good position to make things really good without trying to have perfection from the very beginning, because DAPCAC and all the other standards have a problem. I think they are made with the with the thought that people would not code some completely stupid things. But when you have a web page already done and you find out you're not compliant and you try to fix it, you're getting very you find fantastic solutions nobody thought about before. And I always want give this example with the focus visible, and there's only one major concern. This focus indicator has to have enough contrast to the background of 3:1. So formally, I think you can make 1 by 1 pixel dot to make this indicator compliant to WCAG. Of course, I hope nobody's doing this, but this means not all of these things, if you're really getting creative, will help real people. And with this in mind, I think getting formal perfection is not always a guarantee for becoming completely usable for people. And we have this scoring system where not one single thing like accessibility is making that somebody who is applying cannot get the job or not. Even if he's not perfect in one thing, there are some different features like the best team. Is the team diverse? Maybe one thing you want to have, for example, people with disabilities in the team, or women and men, things like this. But also, of course, the price, also very important. So you have a scoring system in the end, and you can decide much more, just better than putting just one thing. And this is a KO. And if somebody cannot make this, he's out at once without chance.
And it sounds like consistency. The good news about doing it that way, you're being consistent in what you're scoring for.
And transparency. So everybody who is applying can see.
Yes, which I really love that too. And I also love the word that you were using. I'm not really sure if we can use the words perfection and accessibility in the same sentence, because accessibility, it's moving. Yeah. So if you're going for perfection, you're going to get yourself really stressed by doing that. But one thing I loved about what you were talking about before we went on air, when you're talking about how you're scoring these things for the government to make sure that the vendors that the government select is doing the right thing by the people. We all get that. But, you make sure this information is available to all of the vendors. And that is something that I do not think that we've done very well at in the United States. We would just say, nope, you didn't get it. If you heard, you didn't get it, but you never knew why. So by y'all taking the time to help them understand why somebody else is going to get it and you're not, I think really motivates the vendors. And so I applaud that. I also think it's really powerful that not only are you working with the German government, this part of the government, to really make sure that things are accessible for the German citizens, but you are also a digital consultant on your own. So you can provide, I think, a lot of support to these vendors in ways that they don't always get supported on, because we're hearing things, Mark, like, well, we don't really need to worry about it anymore because AI is going to solve accessibility. So all we have to do is just push a button and we're done. So then you're just going to, Mark, get all 100% scores on everything you. Oh, probably not. But I know Antonio wants to come in, but hi.
Yeah, I have a question for Mark. You are based in Germany, so Germany has a very strong culture of perfection around engineering. Some other European countries also have it, and sometimes when we compete with US companies, we miss the competition because waiting for having everything done perfect. So how an accessibility expert deals with that at the same time that you want to do the right thing, knowing that it's impossible to be perfect when working in the space of accessibility?
The first thing I'm always saying when it comes to compliance is that people always say there's no such thing like 100% accessibility, and this is true. But the same is when I'm talking to not developer. I'm trying to use examples from the real life, and I'm saying, yes, this is true, but cars are not 100% safe, but still we want them to have a minimal safety, so the brakes should work, the light should work, so some things must be in order if you want to go with them on the street. And the same is with accessibility. Neither the WCAG nor the European Accessibility Act demand that you are 100% accessible. It's just a baseline. And I was doing this 20 years for myself as a developer, so I know perfectly that you can achieve this, and even a proper way that people can use. So you're making a border around an input field and not a single dot. So this is possible. And I think this is the good news here, because we have a minimal baseline that you actually can reach. You have to know the criteria and then you can fulfill them. But there's one but.
Yeah.
You have to learn it before you can do it. And if you're an agency and you build up a library, a tool set, however you want to call it, it will not be a lot of work anymore. Because if you have made a slider accessible once, you can use it in every project again, and it will mean not more work to make an accessible slider conformant to a corporate design than a non-accessible slider. So if you have your tool set right once, then the effort is becoming less and less. So I always tell the clients it's an initial effort you have to make, learning and making your tool, getting your tool set right, and then that's not so hard anymore. But
Right.
of course, you have to learn it and you should do it from the beginning. It's always really difficult to make it afterwards.
Right, right. It gets a lot more expensive doing it afterwards. Marc, I'm curious from the other side of the pond. Are you seeing the vendors really say, all right, we're going to do this and really stepping up? First of all, I'm curious about that. Darn it, you're shaking your head. No, that's not good. All right. And also, I'm wondering if you're seeing any accidental innovations already coming from this. We're seeing from the billion strong world, looking in a different place, we are seeing some interesting innovations happening, but I still don't know if we can tie it to, certain things. So sadly, I saw you shook your head. No, you're not seeing the vendors really step up and get excited about the humans being included. Yeah. So give the microphone over to you to talk about.
Yeah, actually, I shook my head. Yes, this was my first reaction. But of course, this is once again, it has different levels. Of course, there are companies who are trying to make things better. We have good examples for this also. But in general, this is not the first thing people are thinking about when they're inventing something new. And we are in a world that is inventing faster and faster, and everybody is always impressed with the next big thing and what you can achieve and how to make it. And normally this is done by people that do not have disabilities, and they just don't know about the challenges for people who do have. And so this is not even something bad they intend to do. It's just young people. Most of young people do not have illnesses or disabilities, and so they are just living in their own world. They are doing what they think is cool, and this is what's creating this gap between the many people and the few that have difficulties to step up, to keep up with the speed. It's not
No,
only about disability, it's also about age and different cultures, and we know this. Nobody, especially young people, think about everything that and everybody.
no, I run a few hackathons in Dublin on accessibility. So we had a lot of young people coming in, and what would usually happen is, why haven't I heard about this sooner? Why haven't my teachers in the coding classes have taught me about this? This is something that now that I'm here, I feel that I need to learn. So the curiosity is there. The issue is that nobody has ever put that in front of them. So I think it's also up to us to have some responsibility there.
Yeah, absolutely right. And once again, I don't want to make some bad impression on young people. Again, they are the people who are progressive and they are getting speed into DEI, and all these things that are changing our world to the better. If they know about things like this, I think they are much more open than people who don't have to work anymore, and they are doing the things like they have done it all the time and don't know why to change it just a few years before getting out of work. And I think this is, I think it's something that I'm considering in my work also. For example, when it comes to accessible documents, I'm teaching the young people, and they are normally willing to do this. I put less pressure on the older people because I know they will not work there forever anymore. So if you want to make things better, and especially if you have restricted resources, never-ending resources, I think this is a good strategy not to put a lot of effort where it's put the effort there where you get the most of.
Okay, so let me comment on that briefly. Just to ask a question, just to put a few things into context. Let's say, Mark, you are in 2020, you have a new project with the customer, and now, Mark, you are in 2025, you have a new project with the customer. Do you feel a difference in the way how you have to explain yourself and you have to justify what you are doing?
This is an interesting question. Actually, I think I cannot answer this question because being such a small company, I have enough to do for one person, especially in part-time. So people are coming to me that need help and I don't have to explain it. And in my work in the Federal Office of Food and Agriculture in Germany, I have this role to do this. Earlier as a developer, this was what I'm doing still in 2020. And now I just have a different role and I'm doing this from a different perspective. But of course, I always have to advocate this, but this didn't change. People always want to know why we have to do this. And then I'm explaining. I think this will never change because there are always new people. Everything is in change. And so I don't know if you want to talk about it, but of course it's a big topic. It's nearly, you cannot name it. It's AI. So they're asking you why we have to do this because cannot AI do this for us? And then I have to explain where it cannot yet do this. But of course there are interesting things, but not on the side of the people who are making things. For the people with disabilities, this is already a big help. Maybe it's not making perfect sign language, but of course, if there is a web page that does not have sign language, German or American or whatever at all, this might help understand the web page. Easier language or whatever.
It's also important to notice that Germany is one of the countries with one of the oldest aging populations in Europe, and that is going to be increased over the next decade.
Yeah,
definitely. This is a big problem in every aspect. For example, how to finance people that are getting older, to the care for them. We all know that the older the group is, the more disabilities are there and the more relevant is the work we are doing. On the other hand, of course, it's important always to keep in mind that disability does not mean making things for old people, because of course young people also can be blind or whatever.
yeah. I also want to say that something I just find interesting is that when we first started working, when we were working on accessibility early on we started it in, well, we can argue about when we started it, but say that in 2001, when we had updated our Section 508 again, I found that the U.S. Department of Agriculture here in the United States, obviously U.S. Department, but they were really big on this. And they were one of my first clients when I worked with them. And they were one of the agencies, which I just was a little surprised, Mark. I thought, why is agriculture doing this? I would think other agencies would have started first, technology agencies or policy. No, it was agriculture in the U.S. was one of the first. I always thought that was interesting. And then you're doing it there in Germany. So don't know why, but that's intriguing. The question that I have, you had talked about this a little bit once again before we went on air, but you've mentioned it on air multiple times. You are a small individual company. And yes, you have a client with the German government, but you also have other clients. But you had talked about collaboration. I also think the point you just made with, well, AI is going to already solve this, right? Because some of our leaders in accessibility have already said we've solved. Okay. Nope, not yet. But it is interesting. It's like, why are we having to do this? Why can't AI do it? People are saying, but I'm just curious why you feel collaboration is probably more important now than ever before, especially collaborating with other teams when you have a really tiny team like yourself.
Yeah, first thing of all, I was working as a freelancer sometimes for bigger companies, and they just have the really interesting projects. I nearly said the more interesting projects, but that's not true. There are especially small projects. You have in small projects, you have sometimes so dedicated teams that really want to get the best of everything and have a quality first approach that in bigger countries it's harder to find because they have it's just complete different structure and they are working in a complete different way. But of course, it's also very interesting to work with big countries in big context and make a big impact. So this is what's making this interesting. As a freelancer, I was not able to get these jobs for obvious reasons. And so I was teaming up with a company in another city. It's called Mönchengladbach. Very hard to say for English-speaking people. They
We
are,
know the football team.
yeah, great, yeah. And I'm very happy that this happened because now we can work with much bigger projects and do a lot of good things on a bigger scale. But apart from this, I'm always a big fan of collaboration, of teaming up with others. For example, Athos with Beatrice, I was working sometimes. And I'm a member of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals because of community. And I think this is very important thing, especially when it comes to different opinions, because it's a complete new topic and I don't want to talk about this too much, but I think it's important to talk with people that are not the same opinion and to deal with it and to accept it and not to live only in a single bubble where everybody is telling you how good you are.
I agree. And I think also I've seen earlier on some mistakes made in that there were a few leaders that somehow convinced people they had all the answers. And that's not true. This is innovation. We're all still learning. I remember when Antonio Neal and I were talking about doing this show, we're like, oh, well, we won't need to do it for very long. Well, we're in 11 years. We do this every week. We're in 11 years and there's still a lot to talk about. But speaking of that, I know we've run out of time, and I want to do a couple of things. I want to first of all thank Amazon. Thank you for keeping us on air, and our original sponsor, My Clear Text, which makes sure that we're fully accessible, which we're grateful for. But also, Marc, we want to learn how if somebody wants to work with you, if somebody wants to collaborate with you, if somebody wants to hire you, how would they find you? How would they reach out to you? I know you have a website, but how do they find out more about working with you? Because we would highly recommend working with Marc. He's brilliant. We love Beatrice. She's not going to steer us wrong. And I've heard about Marc also before even Beatrice said, you got to have this brilliant man on AXSChat. So over to you, Marc.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Of course, I'm lucky that I have a non-usual surname. If you're searching for Marc Haunschild, it's quite easy to find me. English people sometimes pronounce it Haunschild. This is not correct, but maybe it's easier to find me then. And the project I was mentioning with the company in Mönchengladbach, it's called Accessibility by Default. And if you want to get in touch, I'm happy to meet you.
Yes, and we'll also put the link to his website and everything on the episode as well. So,
thank you.
Antonio, any last words before we let Marc go?
Thank you so much for joining us, Marc. It was really nice to have you, and hope that we can know maybe we can talk again in the near future on another episode.
I
would say also, Marc and Antonio, one thing that we saw as this has unfolded, once again, we started talking. I started in this field in 2000. So I've been in the field a little bit while, as has Antonio, but it's interesting to see the field shift. Because I remember when I first started talking to Antonio Neal would often say, well, the accessibility cowboys in the States, Deborah. And I'm like, stop it. If we are not, it's just interesting because there was some truth to it, but it's just interesting to see it shift and unfold and new voices really being featured so that we can understand this is about humanity. It's not about any one country, any one law. This is really about making sure that beautiful human beings are fully included at every single stage of their life. So we really appreciate you, Marc. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for this talk. I really loved this and I would be happy to be here again.
Okay, yay. We want to have you back again. All right. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.